Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's discussion on resource exploration in Western Canada. We have a broad panel today with individuals that have projects in the prairies all the way to the Yukon, as well as exploring for different commodities, so it should be an interesting conversation today. Now, I don't see the discussion going for the full hour, so please feel free to submit questions in the chat, ideally about the discussion at hand, as opposed to company-specific questions, and I'll try my best to incorporate them into the conversation. You can find the chat in the bottom right corner of your screen there. So why don't we just get started with introductions, and I'll go from what on my screen left to right here. But if you could just please introduce yourself, what commodity you're exploring for, and where your projects are located. So George, why don't we start with you?
My name is George Reed. I'm the Senior Vice President of Corporate Development for Star Diamond Corporation. We are focused presently on the Star Ryan South Diamond Project, which is in the Fort Alacorn Diamond District of Central Saskatchewan. We also have a 50% interest in a joint venture with Cantera in the Buffalo Head Hills Diamond District in Alberta.
Thank you. And Drew?
Yeah, I'm Drew Zimmerman, CEO of Stallion Uranium. We're focused on uranium in northern Saskatchewan, the Athabasca Basin, one of the premier uranium jurisdictions in the world.
And Tara?
Hi, I'm Tara Christie. I'm the president and CEO of Banyan Gold. We have a 7 million ounce gold resource in Canada's Tombstone Gold Belt, right next to Victoria Gold and Hecla. It's a pretty exciting jurisdiction, and our project benefits from some exceptional infrastructure. So look forward to telling you about it.
Thank you. And last, David, please.
Hi, I'm David Denofrio, CEO of White Gold Corp. As the name suggests, we are primarily focused on gold in Canada's Yukon and the Klondike District. We have a 2.1 million ounce deposit, but we also have an extremely large land package. And although we are primarily focused on gold, this is the Yukon, and you sort of never really know what you're going to find. So there's a couple other flyer commodities we are looking into as well.
Excellent. So we have uranium, diamonds, precious metals, maybe even some base in the mix. I think it's worth covering our base and discuss the notable discoveries or successes that have occurred in your region historically. You could just touch on the history of the region, and we'll go reverse order this time with David kicking things off.
Yeah, this area where we're focused has a tremendous amount of history. So as I mentioned, it's the Klondike. This was the epicenter of the Great Gold Rush at the turn of the century, so about 125 years ago. And since that time, there's been over 20 million ounces of gold mined right from the Placer Creek beds. So a long history of mining, a lot of success. That's actually 20 million ounces that's been recorded. So who knows what the actual totals are. And notwithstanding that, there really has not been any modern day exploration there until about 15 years ago when Sean Ryan, the notorious prospector, went to sort of try to crack the code on where all this gold might be coming from, with the thesis that it didn't come from the sky. And he has been remarkably successful. His unique exploration methodologies has led to two major gold discoveries, one which is now owned by Newmont, and they are going through the permitting process, and the other one which is owned in White Gold Corp. And we are now taking those same methodologies and continuing to explore on our package and having considerable success along the way. So very, very exciting times in this part of the Yukon for sure.
And Tara, Banyan Gold's also in the Yukon. Tell us more about the Tombstone Belt.
Well, you know, the Klondike Gold Rush actually spilled a little bit over into the Mayo area because there is a history of placer mining here as well. But it's more known for actually the high-grade silver that Hecla has right beside us. So we made our discovery in 2019 at Powerline, and we put out our first resource at Powerline in 2020, and it was only 140,000 ounces then. And now Powerline has grown to 6.2 million ounces of the 7 million ounces that we have. So this is an emerging district, you know, very similar to David. There really hasn't been a lot of modern exploration. We made our discovery under a power line beside a road in 2019. That's not even remote. And you imagine what's left in the Yukon. I think that's why the Yukon is so compelling right now, is we have a history of a lot of gold being mined from from placers, but we haven't found all the sources of it, and we haven't even finished exploring the places that have road and good access, never mind further afield. And I think you're seeing that in the Yukon.
Drew, anyone interested in the niche uranium market would know about the Athabasca Basin, so please give us an overview and your pitch on the region.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The Athabasca region is, world renowned for uranium. It's got grades that are, 20 to 100 times anywhere else in the world. It's a, geological marvel, and we're lucky to have it here in Canada, in northern Saskatchewan. The district started up north in Uranium City in the 1950s, pivoted in the 70s and 80s into the eastern Athabasca Basin. And now where we're focused is the southwest Athabasca Basin. That's where NextGen and Fission are developing absolute world-class assets and moving forward with those. And that's where Stallion's focus is, in that underexplored sort of new corner of the Athabasca Basin. But again, this is a basin that's already producing 15% of the world's uraniums. It's the only uranium produced in Canada right now. So it really is a world-renowned area where the assets can be incredibly high grade and incredibly large. So the potential for an exploration company like ourselves to have a multi-billion-dollar discovery is definitely there, and what makes it such an exciting place to be working.
And George, what about the diamond region where you're operating out of?
Kimberlites with diamonds in them were first discovered in Saskatchewan by De Beers in I believe 1988. I was actually part of that. I happened to be on a visit to Canada from South Africa because I'd participated in the exploration that led to what ultimately became the discovery of the Victor Diamond Mine in Ontario. And I was in Saskatchewan. We sampled some kimberlites, and it caused a stir in Saskatchewan because people started thinking laterally. And there was a Russian geophysicist who looked at government survey maps and found there were some very big magnetic anomalies in a very magnetically quiet sedimentary basin. And he thought, well, what could these be but kimberlites? But they were very big. He tried to interest De Beers. They didn't bite. And eventually, with the help of Cameco and Uranits, they were drilled. And in August 1989, the first kimberlites in the Fort Alacorn forest to the east of Prince Albert were discovered. And so the history rolled from there. Star Diamond Corporation got involved in late 95, got a claim over one of those kimberlites, which had been excluded from the initial claim staking by a potential hydroelectric project near the Saskatchewan River. And they got into Star, and on the advice of the late Hugo Dummett, who was a big feature in the Northwest Territories with the Catty Diamond Mine, he recommended that a bulk sample needed to be taken to show the true value of these diamonds and the uniqueness of the diamonds. Anyway, that went ahead. The bulk sample was eventually produced in 2005, an underground bulk sample, large diamond drilling, extensive amount of work was completed. And lo and behold, the first price that was delivered from a 3,000 carat parcel was good, and it was above the sort of market average. And so there was huge interest that was generated at that time. So since that time, a lot of work has been done, very extensive pattern drilling, large diamond drilling, underground bulk sampling on 2 kimberlite pipes. And we're now sitting on what we believe is the largest undeveloped diamond project in the world.
Thank you for that. I want to take a step here with real estate. They say location, 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 but with mining and exploration, one may argue it's infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. And please feel free to debate if you agree or disagree with that statement or not here. But can you discuss the infrastructure in your region you operate? Let's start with you, George.
We are in a very fortunate position in that we're 20 kilometers off paved highway and about the same distance from the Saskatchewan power grid, both of which are enormous advantages for the development of a future mine. We have access to the site on forest roads that are accessible 24/7, 365 days of the year, but of snow in the winter, but we can easily get rid of that. And ultimately, in the construction of a future mine, there would be an all-weather road established to the site. But the opportunity with electrical power is enormously advantageous in that a future mine can be plugged into Sask Power, and the mining operations, the movement of ore to the plant, the removal of waste, and the processing of kimberlite to recover diamonds can all be done with grid power, which greatly reduces the carbon footprint of a mine. We also have many communities that surround the project, and people from those communities have already worked in the bulk sampling and evaluation programs on the project. And so there can be people who live at home and commute to work in the Fort Elacorn forest. Huge advantage with proximity to infrastructure.
And Drew, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think Stallion Uranium is the earliest stage company on the panel here today. What are your thoughts on infrastructure? Is it more about location, and just touch on the infrastructure of your projects?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, infrastructure is always going to be important no matter what stage you're at to a certain degree. So we do have the infrastructure needed for exploration now. That's a year-round road that goes to the southwest side of the Athabasca Basin. You know, we've got camps that are available for crews to stay in year-round as well. So that's really what we need at this stage. We are, mobilizing for drilling. We're setting up temporary work camps to be able to have crews stay on site. So we're able to set up the infrastructure that we need. But again, being in the southwest, it is the underexplored area, so that doesn't have exploration or that big infrastructure build out just yet. But the important thing we like to remind people is it's coming. We have both next gen and fission uranium going into development of what will be some of the new largest uranium mines in the basin that will be bringing over $1 billion worth of infrastructure to the area. So as we progress our projects from the early stage exploration that we're at now into more developed exploration stages, we're going to see that infrastructure be built out sort of at the same time that we progress. So it really is coming to the area, significant upgrades on roads, power, camps, all that sort of thing. So a good time for us to be sort of attacking our exploration as the infrastructure gets built out around us.
Thank you. And Tara?
Yeah, thanks. Similar to Drew, we're in a location with great infrastructure, and the infrastructure has been built because we have mines right beside us and through the history of the project. So, we have existing power lines on the property, which go right to the hydro dam that's 50 kilometers away. And then that's connected to the broader Yukon grid, which, connects to the hydro dam and other power facilities in the Yukon. That's really important for the capital cost of potential of our project, and even for operating. It would be very simple for us to get connected now. We need about 50 meters of power line to get across the highway right away to power our camp. So it's a pretty short distance. Most people are talking in kilometers. We have all-weather roads that are maintained by the Yukon government, which is pretty exciting. One highway right through the property, right along the power line. The power line also has capacity for another mine. It was just rebuilt in January of 2021, and it's only energized to half of its built capacity, which is pretty exceptional. We even have cell phone service on the property, and fiber optic cable goes out along the power line to Victoria Gold. it really is quite exceptional infrastructure that we have. And, you could look and see what that cost for Victoria Gold to build roads, and kind of think about what our capital cost might be if a mine gets built here, just by looking at how much better infrastructure we have than them. So it really does make a difference. And your point that in real estate, it's location, and mining, it is infrastructure, I think really is important.
David, any further comments? And you want to discuss the infrastructure?
Yeah, no, I'll agree. Although, location is important too, right? You can have all the infrastructure in the world, but if you're in the wrong place, that's not going to help you. I think everyone in this panel is fortunate to be in great mine jurisdiction, so that's not an issue here. For us, we're at an actually very interesting point on the infrastructure situation, where the government of the Yukon, along with the federal government, announced several years ago a major infrastructure investment in the order of hundreds of millions of dollars, specifically to help advance exploration and mining. And in our particular area, we're going to be the benefactor of a very significant amount of that investment. So there's two major parts. One is a road that sort of comes up from the south to the casino project, which actually I could have mentioned earlier in terms of some historic exploration that's happened. That's an enormous copper gold porphyry, something of the order of 20 million ounces and 10 plus billion pounds of copper. And then there's another road that's being planned, which goes from Dawson right down to the Newmont's coffee project, which is, as I mentioned, in the process of being permitted. So we will be a benefactor of that as well. And as to Tara's point, if you can sort of piggyback on someone else's investment, especially a junior company, that's an amazing position to be in. So that's sort of all kind of happening as we speak. From a broader perspective, I think one thing people maybe have a little bit of a misconception is, the Yukon's remoteness. And I guess it sort of depends where you might be in the Yukon. Like the Yukon is north, sure, but if you're in Vancouver, it's only a couple hours sort of flight to get you there, right? So it's not maybe as out of the way as people might think. And once you have the infrastructure there, you can work all year round, weather independent. So that's something I think people need to keep in mind. And another very recent development, which has been topical in our community for sure, is the potential for connecting the Yukon's power grid to the BC power grid. And we've been talking to several members of the governments, and that's something that's real, that's in the, it's not in the idea phase anymore. Now it's kind of in the how do we get it done type of a phase. So notwithstanding, I think some of the attributes and everything that's going on right now, something like that would just kind of be a game changer for so many different projects, right? I think as we mentioned earlier and Tara touched on, the Yukon is probably one of the greatest underexplored areas in Canada with so much geological potential. And we're just kind of scratching the surface of these convenient areas to get to. But as the infrastructure investments continue to happen, you open up new opportunities. And I think, the future of what lies ahead from mineral exploration is just sort of totally unlimited in terms of its potential. So it's a lot of exciting things going on these days.
David, you said something that I want to pull on that thread a little further. You said that it's not that remote, the plane ride away, a 2-hour flight away to Vancouver. But what about in regards to the workforce and finding the talent needed for these projects? And I want to leave it open to the group. We don't need to go in order. So David first, but then anyone care to chime in after that?
Yeah, I think that's a very important consideration, right? And to some aspects, if you build it, they will come, but who's they, right? And I think generally speaking, since COVID, there's been a nationwide or a global wide worker shortage, it seems. Personally, we have not had those problems, but we're an earlier stage exploration company, so we're not talking about workforces of hundreds of people. Maybe over by the Victoria Gold side, they'd have some more specific commentary, but I think if you're in a good place and you treat people fairly, you're going to be able to have it. Now, in this industry, I think that's a broader question, right? What is the workforce looking like in general? That's a conversation for another day. But Canada is a great place to live and work. The Yukon has its certainly attractiveness in many regards. So not a problem we've had, but happy to pass this over to the rest of the panel to chime in on their perspectives.
I guess, that is something that we've had pretty good success in, is actually getting local people and Yukoners to work for us. And I was actually really quite surprised because we have two mines right beside us, Hecla and Victoria Gold. And you would think that everybody would be, or they would draw a huge percentage, and they do. But there's a group of people which aren't necessarily the kind of people who want to work at a large mine, because it's kind of like going to a small town. And that's one of the things that we've been able to offer, is that we're small. We're still a little bit of a family. We get up to maybe 40 people, but more typically 25 to 30. We're able to offer flexible schedules. So community people, very similar to George, can drive to our site on their own kind of schedule. And having an individual schedule, when you're not flying, you have a lot of optionality on what kind of schedules you can have for people. And that means that we can hire a much more diverse group of people. We also put in a really intensive training program so that we can bring in young workers and people that are new workers to the mining industry and train them, because that's, those are the people that are left in the community. And I think that was a really important part of our commitment to the community, is how do we make sure that we're providing meaningful jobs and hiring jobs, or the people that are in the community that need those jobs. So, that's something that's been quite successful for us. And the other real important part for us is we're not quite year round, but we're pretty close. So very long season, unlike lots of exploration companies that are only 4 months when they're fly-in or remote, which we're not. We're 10, 11 months of the year. So we've been able to attract Yukoners who want that kind of stability and regular schedules, and that's been part of our success, because not having to retrain people is also really important. Having people that know your site, know your geology, and show up again and again. So I think it's different in various different places. We've tried to avoid having too many fly-in people, because one, it brings your cost up, but also then you're not drawing from the local community, and that also is part of people talking about you in the communities. When you've got people that are like working for you and are at your site and they live in the local communities, that's that does a lot for your reputation as well.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, similar to David, instead of Tara, a smaller workforce with Stallion, being a junior explorer, but we're incredibly fortunate. There's been 60 plus years of uranium exploration in the basin, anchored with a global player like Cameco. So there's always been a workforce that's getting trained and put to work. Other big companies like NextGen, Denison, Fission, Orano from France, have kept a steady flow of workers. As we're seeing the uranium market heat up and more companies come to the area, I think we are starting to see it strain the ability or the capacity of the workers that are there. I mean, we're fortunate. It's a day's drive out of Saskatoon that sort of acts as the hub for the northern part of the province, and there is a lot of capacity in Saskatchewan. But I think right now, having, again, on our side, no issues and line of sight on all the work that we need to get done, we're in a pretty fortunate position with everything that's been built out in Saskatchewan. But I do think it's something that we need to look at as we go forward, because you're not seeing the youth as much come into the business as I think you used to be able to see. And I think that can come from policies that need to get put into place. But, that's another conversation. So for us, we're very fortunate, a young, small team, and able to find the people that we need to work for us. But again, as we continue to grow, I think that's something we'll have to keep an eye on.
Just as additional comments on what I've said already, is certainly people from communities around our project have worked there. They have worked there very successfully, commuted to home every night, very advantageous. There are also many people within this region of Saskatchewan who have mining experience, either with potash, uranium, or flying to Alberta for oil and gas, or oil and gas in Saskatchewan. So there certainly are mining skills in the neighborhood, and that is very advantageous. Obviously, you need to attract technical experts who will ultimately run the project. But I believe that the project will certainly attract the right people, and we're in a very good position to do that. Thank you.
Drew, you said something interesting about policies in place to attract the youth. Why don't we talk about that and elaborate further on that, and what are the provinces and territories doing to foster this industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think in Saskatchewan we see a lot of incentives from tax structures and that sort of thing for critical mineral exploration. But again, that comes from the company level and the work that we're doing. I think we need to maybe lean in more and see more policies or incentives put in place on the education side of things. Are there the programs that are available? Are they in the smaller communities, maybe just outside of a few big cities that they're offered now? And is there, incentives for students to go into those programs instead of, tech jobs or something like that, that I think could really help build out that industry to see more expertise, more education. Mining is changing. We use a lot of geophysics and need a lot of geophysicists with the work that we do in the Athabasca Basin. And again, that's a skill that takes years to train on and develop, and it's a skill that isn't a big program at universities. So again, having different incentives in place, I think, would definitely help grow the capacity of what Western Canada is able to do with the incredible endowment that we have on the natural resource side.
Drew, that's a good point, but I'd like to, I don't think it's just the government incentives. I think it's something we as industry need to do. And it's something I'm really passionate about. I started a charity 13 years ago, Every Student, Every Day, which works with communities and First Nations all across the Yukon to, understand what the barriers are to kids getting to school and getting that education, and work with them to help address some of those barriers. And it's not the top down, here a company, here's some money, go hire somebody and try to, it's the, here's some things that we know work that we can help empower communities to help get their own students to school. And a lot of it is the trades and technology. We've got 6 things that we know work. And one of them is science, trades, technology, which we fund in a couple of the community schools, both in Dawson and Mayo. And it's been very successful in being a draw to getting kids in there. And we all know we need trades, we need the technical experts, and we need people in the community who are actually working at the projects and benefiting from them, that are in their area. So, I think it starts with a lot of us leading as well, not just waiting for the governments, particularly since their whims change every time we have an election. And it takes a long time to actually make change and get people involved in the industry. So I think it's something we need to work with our industry associations more on as well.
I've been involved in Saskatchewan for 20 years, and certainly the Saskatchewan government is very well rated by the Fraser Institute. I think we all know about that. But one of the incentives that I always supported in Saskatchewan was the Saskatchewan Mining Association. Every summer holiday runs a mining association teachers tour where they get about 30 school teachers from around Saskatchewan, and they expose them to the mining industry in a big way. They take them underground on uranium, on potash mines. They go fly up to see the uranium mines in the north. We toured our site. I often have done a presentation on diamonds to this group in Saskatoon. I think it is a very advantageous so that you get teachers on side with the mining industry, that the mining industry isn't bad. The mining industry is essential.
I'll jump in real quick there as well. I will say, hats off SMA, the Saskatchewan Mining Association. We've presented to that same group of teachers, and I think it is presenting mining in an exciting light. The opportunities that are there with our companies. And the teachers, I think, are where it can start. So it is a great program, and again, an industry group like the SMA driving that forward.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good opportunity to incorporate the audience and a reminder for anyone that came in late, we are accepting questions in the chat, trying to incorporate it into the conversation at hand. I believe I'm supposed to read it as Mr. Tilden posed the question, have any of you thought to go to high schools and universities to recruit students and offer them a long-term employment, thereby lifelong employees? And
I'm going to a school to present tomorrow, and I regularly present in Yukon schools and talk to them. We do, in my career, it's mostly been in the Yukon. We have actually run programs specifically aimed at mentoring, working with the First Nations, which is in Dawson, which I did a lot of work. We actually did like a 2-week program where we had in-class safety training, and then we actually sent them out to various mine sites and let them just be mentored. They didn't have to work, just here's all the jobs that you might do. Because, when you're under 18, you can't actually work at a mine site in the Yukon right now under the workers' compensation. But, getting them out to see the site. And that's also something that we do with the First Nation in Mayo. We've brought out young people just to see the site and see what jobs are available and kind of try to encourage them. So I think that's a really great idea. And we also have our Yukon University, which also is doing that. And I work a little bit with some of the people there that, is about encouraging young people to come into these careers. So great question.
I'll move on to another one unless anyone wants to add anything. Glords is wondering if we'd be willing to discuss social licensing around exploration, how to carry that through to production, particularly in the context of First Nations or Indigenous relations. Anyone want to address this individual's question?
Sure, I'll jump in. It's something I think is very important for mining these days to have that social license, but also to be able to have the economic benefit come to the local communities. And that's something that we've done right from the beginning of working in the Athabasca Basin, and being able to have the local communities on side with us and utilize them, even though we are a junior company, to have them do the contract work that we have available that fits, that they have the skilled labor for. So I think it's an important piece. And again, this is coming from a junior exploration company with the limited full-time employment roles, but still being able to pass on the economic benefit to the community, because that is what will get you the support of the community if they're seeing the tangible benefits of having you operate there. And we think that's important. And again, I guess part of the tangible benefits is being in communication with the local community as well, so that they're able to see that you're there, and being able to work together obviously brings these projects forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of that. I think it's paramount importance to establish these relationships right at the very beginning. You're in somebody's traditional territory, or there's other local communities, and I think it's we behoove to ensure that everyone is better off for you having been there than they were before. And the way to do that, I think, is to have open, honest, transparent communication and working relationships. People make sure any concerns are they have a platform to address those, and to continue to work as a collaborative group of stakeholders all along the way. And it's certainly the right thing to do. And I've seen it in the past, and been involved with projects where a great discovery leads to life-changing gains for local communities, whether it's infrastructure, schools, hospitals, etc. So there is a tremendous amount of benefit that mining can bring to local communities and communities around the world. And I think that's something that needs to be better publicized by the media, right? The mining, for whatever reason, is always sort of given this negative slant, but there's a lot of positives that come out of mining, other than the obvious stuff of giving us the materials that we need to live. It's helped a lot of people's lives, and I think a lot of people, that's a big part of why they're in it. Going to all these remote places for opportunities, obviously, to make economic gains, but always help the livelihoods of many other people as well. So it's certainly something that it's very important.
George, I see. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I would certainly support David's view on in our evaluation of the project, we have employed extensive local groups and obviously generate a lot of goodwill from that. And that has to continue into the life of mine so that there is participation from everybody and all the stakeholders ultimately benefit from the project. It's not just for one group.
David brought up an interesting point about the perception of mining in the industry, and I'm sure all of us are familiar being ingrained in the industry about the incident that happened in Turkey last week or a couple of weeks ago. Is it the perception has to be more on a local level, or is it I don't know where I'm going with this exactly, to be frank, but if anyone wants to chime in on this, should the focus and emphasis be on these local communities for the perception, or should there be like a mass adoption or acceptance of this industry?
Well, it's a big question, Kyle, but I think you always have to focus on the community, even though we've got a broader perception in, people in the city don't sometimes realize that they use things that are mined every day and their livelihood depends on it. Whereas in rural communities, they do, but they're kind of two separate issues. Your social license and your communication with the community is something that is paramount. Understanding the community, taking the time to actually listen, and the question around exploration to production. Well, that social license and the work you do has to change from when you start at early exploration as you go through production, and it really has to be based on what the community wants and the needs and what you hear. And so there is no simple recipe that this is what you have to do. Here's the check boxes, because they're moving check boxes, and it really depends on your project and the community. So it's a really big question. Overall in society, mining needs to do a better job of reminding people that they need mining, that their cell phone has 40 minerals and metals in it, and that the tap water doesn't just come out of the tap, that all those pipes were mined, or maybe they're plastic, but even plastic comes from mining. So we as a society need to get back to understanding the importance of mining and the critical metals, the roles it's going to have in helping us get to this green economy that we're not at yet. There's a lot that we need to do as in society, and it really is it's going to be bigger than any one mining company. It has to be our associations and our governments really understanding the role.
Sure, Mike, excellent. So in preparation for this, I did come up with a question per panelist. And Chair, we touched on the question I had planned for you, so maybe I'll ask Mr. Tilden's question for you, because I'm pretty certain it's directed toward Banyan. Are you offering any scholarships? And you're on mute, just to...
Yeah, so we do. Actually, we set up a scholarship a year and a half ago under the Yukon Foundation, which is a foundation that administers them so that it can be a bit independent. And we have up to $5,000 per year for students in mining-related careers, and often we've actually broken that up if there were more students too. So we're just an early exploration company, and we intend to continue to grow that scholarship. I know there's other Yukon companies that have set up their own scholarships working with the First Nations, as well as through the Yukon Foundation or the Yukon University. So I know like Western Copper and others have done that as well. So we're seeing that as a driver for sure to get youth and students. If you can get your way paid through university because there's a scholarship into mining, that might bring some new people in. And it's a really broad career. You don't have to work at a mine site to be involved in mining. And that's the other message we really need to get out is, might be the CEO, like some of us sitting here, or you might be the lawyer, the accountant, which isn't necessarily a mine site job. And then there's all those mine site jobs that are also very well paying.
And there's a lot of cool technology jobs now, AI, data processing, all this analytical stuff. It's science. It's mining's becoming as much of a scientific endeavor as anything else. So the perception is really, really needs to be improved, I think, on a broad scale.
Yeah, certainly. David, I had a question for you, and it's open to Tara as well, really. How would you say Yukon stacks up in terms of other jurisdictions of Canada, like the eastern provinces of Ontario or Quebec or Newfoundland?
I think there's certainly some benefits, and then with both areas. I think from a pure exploration potential, I think the Yukon, as I mentioned, is probably on the top of many lists globally, especially in a place where there's rule of law and you're in a tier 1 type of an environment. So I think from pure opportunity, I would rank the Yukon sort of right up there. Ontario and Quebec have other benefits. They have the benefits of more infrastructure, which probably translates into lower operating costs. But then again, it's very hard to paint a broad brush with anything. Ontario and Yukon are big places. There's areas within those that have their own different dynamics, whether it's accessibility, whether it's First Nations perspectives, or other local communities' perspectives on mining. So I think it's a really difficult question to ask, but there's certainly some benefits to each. I think the Yukon is a phenomenal place to work, and from the pure opportunity that we see there, and I think other people see there, and I think look at what the majors are doing. I think almost every major mining company now has taken a toehold in some capacity into an exploration company in the Yukon. So they're sort of seeing this area as up and coming gold camp, or probably multiple gold camps, and that's why they're looking to make that focus.
Yeah, fair enough. Tara, if you had any further commentary on operating in the Yukon, feel free to do it now.
Sure. We're both biased because we work and operate there, and it's the place that I know the best, even though I've worked all across Canada and the US North. There's the other part is the permitting process and the settled land claims that the Yukon benefits from. The original umbrella final agreement was 1992, and so we've had self-governing First Nations, 11 out of the 14, which is really important in terms of certainty and understanding where the lines are, or where there's overlap between different traditional territories, and also the unique permitting process and environmental assessment process that came out of that. I think that is actually a big advantage for us as we move forward, because there is a pathway through the permitting process which has the First Nations involved, and they were involved in designing it. So I think that sets us apart. The infrastructure, you can't beat the hydropower in Quebec, so that's hard to compete against. But looking towards a jurisdiction that has great geology and a lot of the pieces that check the boxes, I don't think there's any jurisdiction that always checks every single one of the boxes. But Yukon certainly getting closer to checking all the boxes for the investment that we want to see.
Thank you for that. George, I want to bring you back into the conversation here. Now, many on the call are familiar with precious metal companies and might be interested in precious metal exposure as well as uranium. Can you make the case for why someone might want to consider a diamond company?
Yes, I certainly can. I'm coming up at the beginning of next month. I'm 40 years in the business of diamond exploration, so I'm a believer. But it's diamond prospects that are viable are not found frequently, and usually their exploration and evaluation can both be time-consuming and very costly. However, in the case of a project like the Fort Alacorn, the Star Around South Diamond project, once you've found something, it's really worth hanging on to. It is extremely interesting. We are dealing with mantle-derived rocks that have been brought to the surface. The geology is beyond compare as far as I'm concerned. You're dealing with periddotites and eclogites and minerals that have crystallized at 150 to 400 kilometers down in the earth and have been brought to the surface. There is a real uniqueness about these minerals. And in the case of the diamonds in the Fort Alacorn, We have an unusual diamond size frequency distribution. There will be big ones in our future. We've already discovered a 49.6 carat stone in the evaluation of our project. There are other very high value stones with about $11,000 a carat for a single diamond. There is a uniqueness about this project, enormous ore volume, very interesting diamonds, high proportion of type 2A stones. Type 2A diamonds can be the most unique gin and tonic white. They can be slightly brown, and they can, in rare cases, be pink. Those are all opportunities from the kimberlites in the Fort Alacorn. I think exploration for diamonds is, I've had a wonderful career, and I would thoroughly recommend it. Although the diamond projects are hard to find and you need to work at it.
Thank you for that. Drew, in the Athabasca Basin, many uranium speculators, investors most likely would like to have exposure in the region. How would you choose, or how can they choose or differentiate the different small uranium exploration companies?
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased. I think we offer a tremendous opportunity in the Athabasca Basin, but maybe that's the best way to start when you look at the Athabasca Basin on a broad map. Look and see which companies have dominant land positions. I mean, we are the largest landholder in the Southwest Basin, an area that we think is up and coming. But with every exploration team, you need to then look at the people that are there. Have they had experience in the area? Have they found deposits? Have they created shareholder value in finding those deposits? And I think that's a pretty critical step when it comes to junior mining. And then the second or maybe third thing, I guess, would be the news flow. Get in touch with the company, sign up for their news. Are they consistently taking steps to be advancing their project? Are they putting their dollars to work in the right places? And from there, I think you will get a pretty good understanding of which companies are putting in the work to have that discovery success, or in cases of maybe other companies on this panel where you've already had the discovery but need to have the build out and the start of development. But again, I think that's sort of how I would take a look at it. And again, coming back to Stallion and what we've done, I mean, we've sort of checked all of those boxes in a big way. I think obviously the largest explorer in the Southwest, team that's been behind some significant value creation and geologists that have found world-renowned assets, and news flow that continues to really drive our projects forward. Even news we had out this morning covering 2,200 square kilometers with a regional effective survey that is a significant value creator for the land package that we have. So that's a broad way to take a look at all the juniors, but it's a big question and one that will take some work. So I think that's the best advice to give to junior investors is, roll up your sleeves and get in touch with the management and really dig into each story and the value they provide.
Before we get to the closing remarks, the individual in the chat here, Dad's Rock, it's a good handle there. I believe he or she would appreciate me reading it verbatim, because I think it shows a lot of the frustration many people that are investing or speculating in this space feel. Does any presenting companies involved in any actions to stop market manipulations, blind naked shorting, high frequency and algo trading? The junior sector has been beaten to a pulp. It's very unjust to investors, as companies such as yours are the project generators and therefore generators of wealth for a vibrant economy. Should the tick test be reinstated? Good luck to all. And if anyone has commentary, if you're part of this movement, anything like this. No one has an opinion on the
Well,
matter?
no, I think it's a very astute comment. There's a lot of issues out there which are unjustly penalizing the junior Canadian markets. There's a great organization that's been founded to combat that. It's Safe Canadian Mining. I think you guys are involved with that in some capacity in helping Eric Sprott and another number of other kind of industry stalwarts. So it's good to see there's progress. It's, obviously things move slowly, unfortunately, especially with regulations in the capital markets, but it's certainly, I think the more vocal people, companies, investors are, the better the chances are of remedies being implemented. So I'm sure there's, maybe Kyle, you can direct them towards more resources in this regard.
Yes, Dad's Rock, SaveCanadianMining.com. I believe it's that simple, and there's a petition you can fill out there. I believe it was a really successful year, 2023, for that organization, and in becoming aware. We did host an event with Eric Sprott as well, which had great attendance. I could pass you that link through our YouTube channel if you're interested. Definitely reach out in that regards. I believe that's all the questions from the audience, though. So I like doing a little 30-second, 1-minute closing remark from each panelist. What can individuals expect in 2024 for your companies? And David, we'll start with you.
Oh, for sure. Well, listen, it was a great panel. Thanks for having me. White gold, we had a couple of very significant new discoveries we made in the last couple of years. I mentioned earlier the 2.1 million ounces of gold we have in deposit. That is open in all directions. We continue to show additional mineralization close to that deposit. Some more news flow to follow in that regard. But we made a very significant new discovery on our Betty property, which is contiguous to Newmont's Coffee deposit, hitting some exceptional grades, 5 grams over 25 meters, 3.5 grams over 50 meters, right on the same fault. So we think that is a tremendous new opportunity. We are going to certainly look to follow up on a couple of new properties. We have such a tremendous land package. I think when you look at white gold and why it was so interested for us to get involved, and we were able to attract Agnico Eagle and Kinross to become our partners, is because it's such a unique opportunity. We're in this historic area with so much gold, placer production, seen such limited work. The team that made the big discoveries in the area is our technical team. They think they've cracked the code. We're now scratching the surface. They've been incredibly successful in the last few years. And we think based on the work we've done over the last couple of years, the opportunities ahead of us are as good, if not better, than what we've seen before. So we continue to build our ounces, make new discoveries, expand our new discoveries. All the while, I think there's a very significant tailwind to the Yukon with Newmont permitting their mine next door, and a lot of the other great work that many other companies in Yukon are doing right now.
Thank you for that. And Tara, the 2024 catalyst for Banyan Gold?
Well, we just put out some pretty incredible news with our 7 million ounce resource, which we've built since we really made the discovery in 2019. We also put out positive metallurgy, and we're continuing to do more metallurgical work. So we'll have additional news flow from that work that we're doing. We are planning an exploration program. We are still have a pretty strong treasury from the financing that we did in December of 2022. We still have $7 million, and we do have some income, which means that we'll be able to get back out in the field. And we're working on what program we think is really going to add the most value. It's terrible to have options, but we can continue to grow the resource. We can focus on drilling out what you might mine first in high grade. We can look at some of our targets. Similar to David, we have over 300 square kilometers of land package, and we've barely explored anything but the 5% where we have our resource. So focus on new discoveries. So look for some news on that in the next month or so as we develop those plans, and we really try to figure out in this market, how are we going to deliver the most value for our shareholders? It's a difficult market for juniors. That's definitely not a secret. So to be in the position we are, to be able to have options and the cash to implement them is pretty unique. So, we're looking out for shareholders, and we'll have some news flow through 2024.
And Drew, maybe I'll add on top of it for you your thoughts on the uranium market in 2024, as well as the catalyst for your company specifically for the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, uranium has become a very hot topic. It's got attention when it moved from $20 a pound several years ago to now over $100 a pound. It's part of the clean energy and green energy sort of revolution, a nuclear renaissance as we look to electrify our economies and need the carbon-free power source that's baseload power to do that. So, I think we've seen uranium companies pull back over the last 3 or 4 weeks, but we've still seen uranium prices stay above $100 a pound. So, it's my view, I guess, that uranium prices will continue to move higher. There's a significant supply constraint. There's already a shortfall of supply versus demand in the market, and demand is growing. And we think there's more catalysts coming that will grow demand further. So for us, it's an incredible backdrop to operate a junior explorer in. We see the uranium prices going, much higher in the years ahead. And that makes the pounds in the ground worth more and more and more. And that's what we're trying to do at Stallion. So, having a big land package, we've got over 3,000 square kilometers of land in the Athabasca Basin, the best real estate for uranium exploration in the world. And we've advanced that to the point where we've just launched the mobilization of our maiden drill program. We'll have drills turning shortly, and we'll be putting that news out to the market. And that's, the ultimate test for a junior explorer. I mean, our neighbor F3 Uranium 7x'd on one drill hole in the Athabasca Basin at the end of 2022, and uranium prices were $45 a pound, not over $100 like we see now. So that significant potential, from one result is possible with our company. But we're also doing a lot of other things to lean on other levers of value creation, bringing up several other key targets from such a big land package. We think we're going to have multiple tier 1 targets that are going to be available for drill testing as we continue to move forward. So a really exciting time, very near term for us. But again, even the next couple of years look really exciting as we continue to do the work and look for that next big discovery on our land package.
Thank you for that, Drew. George, what can people expect from Star Diamond this year?
Star Diamond Corporation, as I've said, has the largest undeveloped diamond project on the planet. And it has a unique diamond population with some exceptional value stones that we anticipate mining in the future. In November last year, we announced a transaction with Rio Tinto where they will relinquish their 75% share of the project, and we will gain 100% of the project. We anticipate that transaction closing in March, in other words, next month, in a few weeks' time. We look forward to that closing and the opportunity that it brings our company to get our teeth stuck into this project. Rio Tinto had done a lot of very good work, and we can use that to our benefit and further develop the project. From that work that Rio did, we will define a revised mineral resource. We believe that will be stronger as a consequence of their work. And then based on that, we can work our way into a PFS to provide a new baseline from which we can provide a metric for the value of this project. We look forward to this opportunity. Certainly, we've done a lot in the background. We can build on that work, and we look forward to the answers in 2024. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for participating today, and especially the audience, too. Great questions. It was a nice interactive discussion. If you did come in a little late, this event is being recorded, so it will be available on YouTube in the coming days here. But thank you all for participating. Great discussion.